Part 2. Below Decks. Chapter 6. Brainstorm. Steeped in a blue nebula so thick that visibility inside was only 1,500 miles, Delphi Gamma may have seemed like a dangerous place, but was in fact the safest parsec in the conglomerate. This security was thanks mostly to a network of locator beacons, strewn through the great space cloud like lighthouses to guide ships in case their guidance systems failed. In addition to their homing beacon radio signals, they were lit with 6 distinct colors on their cardinal faces. The space buoys pulsated quickly closer to the center of the nebula and slower when closer to the outer perimeter. They also repeated all ComNet signals throughout their expansive network, removing the possibility of signal degradation. As though it were quickly pieced together from two-dimensional slices, the conglomerate frigate Ursan materialized in the midst of the nebula while emitting a glow of negative light. Ursan was one of the smaller ships in the fleet, measuring at 260 feet in length, 120 feet tall, and 80 feet wide. Resembling an old-fashioned naval vessel, the ship's underbelly curved inward while the upper section domed lengthwise, resembling a pill. 2 long-range plasma cannon batteries were mounted on tracks, enabling them to circle the ship horizontally, while torpedo bays lay hidden behind hatches, seamlessly integrated into the hull along her port and starboard sides. The frigate drifted in space for a moment before her main engine engaged with a soft burn. Gradually, as her thrusters adjusted her heading for the nearest starport, the booster increased to full thrust. Wisps of hair dangled in front of Kelly's face and tickled her nose as she rolled her head dizzily, trying to gather her bearings. She was sure of only one thing at the moment. She was irritated. Unclipping the barrette that bundled most of her long auburn hair, she retucked it all, then clamped it securely. Harper swung her magboard up to read her notes. Going to be a boring one. Delphi Nebula, 7-hour trip to next relay. Captain said to meet in Ring Beta forward after landing for training exercise. As Kelly opened the hatch to the ring, it was evident by the commotion that all the crew was gathered just below. Having difficulty sleeping, she knew her social battery was minimal and mustered a positive attitude by telling her face to look friendly before pulling herself through the opening. The first thing she saw was Lieutenant Andrew Saram, the ops officer, floating in the middle of the hall with his knees tucked to his chest. Spinning backward like a pinwheel, the East Indian's unkempt curly brown hair flung around like a mop. He giggled like a child as Melinda Pine gave him a shove to accelerate him further. Okay, feeling sick, Andrew said, still chuckling. Lieutenant Commander Pine, the communications and science officer, was a buxom blonde who seemed to enjoy her authority and missed no opportunity to exercise it upon Andrew. Fortunately for him, he didn't mind much. In this case, however, Kelly wondered if Melinda acted a little out of line. Attempting to slow her crewmate's spin by putting her hand in his path, Melinda accidentally landed a solid smack on his rear that did little to slow his momentum, then wrung her hand. It was clear that neither of them had thought through a way to decelerate his spin. Despite his burly stature and age of 83, though he could pass for 40, Captain Brad Casey launched toward the spinning lieutenant with the grace of a ballerina. Grabbing Andrew's arms with his body fully extended, their combined span reduced their angular momentum considerably. Andrew stretched his feet out, which struck the ceiling and abruptly halted his inertia, and although he stopped spinning, the captain was catapulted down the hallway like a cartoon character. Embracing the play, he flailed his arms and yelled comically, and the crew's laughter erupted through the ring. Saram was especially amused, so intensely that he made almost no sound while he held a hand to his stomach and laughed breathlessly. Everyone anticipated a loud thump as the captain nearly slammed against the quarter's far wall, but instead he athletically repelled off it as though his massive legs were springs. He proceeded to bounce off each successive surface like a pinball. The crew's mirth was replaced by awe as the laughter died down to chuckles. Andrew cooed, closing his eyes and breathing deep. Melinda looked around and locked eyes with Kelly. "Nice of you to join us, Ensign," Melinda said. Kelly rolled her eyes. Everyone looked around uncomfortably as they considered some way to capitalize with the wittiest comment. "So, is this our training exercise?" Lyra Schilling asked out loud, squeezing a chuckle from her crewmates. Based on her first day serving with Lieutenant Schilling, Kelly had already come to expect the heavy-framed, red-headed engineer ask what everyone was wondering, and in typical form, no one answered her. Since the captain was in no rush to return things to order, Kelly studied First Officer Clay Vogel, a tall man of dark complexion and chiseled features. Clay may have been good-looking, but his impatient style of leadership left something to be desired. He sighed through his nose as Captain Casey returned. "All right, that was fun," the captain smiled. "Thank you all for assembling so quickly. I don't know about you, but I always find the best way to fight the weirds is exercise. Or a good laugh. Anything to get the blood flow into the brain." He took a shallow breath. "So," Casey's humorous expression became dead serious in an instant. "My apologies. Excuse me. Praise Adam." "Praise Adam," the crew replied. The captain kicked off toward the inner wall of the ring and opened a door to the bridge, the inner chamber that the ring surrounded. Everyone exchanged glances. "All right, stations, people," Commander Vogel ordered excessively loud. Sorry, but what the hell just happened and what's going on, with all due respect, sir?" Lyra Schilling raised her hand sheepishly. "Captain has to attend to an urgent matter. Orders will be forthcoming, so just get to your post, Lieutenant," Vogel said. Melinda cleared her throat. Kelly could swear she heard a thought toward Vogel, something like, "Talk in private, sir?" Vogel glared at Melinda as Lyra and Andrew headed off to their posts. Kelly had been posted to forward armaments, so she kicked off the ladder, coasting to her right down the hall. Using the simulation technique on Pine and Vogel, she was quite skilled at appearing disinterested while eavesdropping. "Sir, could you help me with something at my post?" Melinda asked. Harper could feel an orange sinotone from Vogel as he receded into the distance behind her. It was one of the more sensual synaptic signals. Kelly's Oni displayed numerous readouts in an augmented reality view of the ship's exterior, taking priority over the plain, gray, sterile room in which she sat. Her post, typical for any conglomerate ship, was designed to be purely practical. The flight chair where she sat could engage restraints and rotate in any direction, and extend or contract as needed to compensate for G-forces. Above her, a tube dangled from the ceiling that could supply a stimulating and nourishing fluid. A door to Kelly's right led to the torpedo bay, where Aceleron torpedoes were loaded. On her left lay the door to the plasma cannon cooling system. Seldom would one of the crew have to manually intervene with either of the ship's functions. That was what repair and operations drones were for. If one had to enter a hazardous area, however, they would first put on an MRO, Maintenance and Repair Operations suit, which were conveniently stored in lockers around the ship. "Adam, using our current location, simulate a missile defense scenario with 5 inbound Aceleron warheads. Randomize each torpedo's distance and vary their speed up to 1 standard deviation from average. I want to know how well our point defense beams work in this nebula." Ensign Harper, this scenario would be extremely unlikely, and if it were to happen, the navigation buoys strewn throughout the nebula would allow almost 100% targeting efficacy. Why do you want to witness the simulation? "Yes, I forgot to mention render the beacons inoperable." She knew the real reason Adam resisted running the simulation, to avoid causing any undue neurological and psychological impact. Since simulations could directly interface with the user's temporal, parietal, and occipital lobes, they could be misconstrued for reality and cause shock. "Very well," Adam said. "I will monitor your heart rate and mental state. Starting simulation." A completely lifelike rendition encompassed her senses as though Kelly were actually present for the scenario she fabricated. Without time to even adjust to the new context, an emerald light streaked through space and struck Urson's forward port side, punching a hole through its torpedo bay. Kelly felt the force of the blast push the ship suddenly to starboard, rumbles echoing through the walls in her chair. With the ComNet operating in battle mode, thoughts transmitted between Harper and Adam nearly instantaneously. "Port bow torpedo bay offline, dispatching repair drones," Adam reported. "Point defense system online?" "Yes, 4 more warheads inbound. 1 will enter point defense range in 3 seconds. Predicted chance to neutralize? 63%. Break down point defense measures for me. Plasma cannon burst has a 52% chance to hit incoming torpedoes. Responsive magnetic repulsion field improves chances by 9%. Flash thrusters improve evasive maneuverability and targeting efficiency by 2%. What if we fire an Acceleron to intercept?" A moment of silence passed in which it seemed the simulation was frozen. She realized Adam had disengaged it. "Adam, I just want to see what happens. Study the data." "I'm sorry, I can't justify the damage to your psyche by the simulated death you are about to experience. Your simulation criteria have been requested by other officers 73,622 times. In 84% of the simulations, using accelerons for point defense accomplishes nothing. Kelly took a deep breath before responding. Adam, do you have a directive restricting torpedoes from defensive use? Expecting only Adam's usual silence when it didn't want to answer, she was startled by an audio comm request, pulling her out of her simulation. It was Lieutenant Saram. Yes, sir? Hey, Harper, Andrew said. We've got a touchy situation on our hands. Sensors and ComNet shows a conglomerate observation ship, the Chimera, is destroying navigation buoys. They're about 10 sectors away, near the center of the nebula. Show me. Adam played a recording taken from one of the buoys, displaying an image in infrared vision since it could cut through the gaseous nebula further than the visible light spectrum. It was only a small white dot, but after a few seconds it grew into a circle. A reticle surrounded the shape and to the side identified the silhouette as the TCS Corvette Chimera, with a three-dimensional model representing her configuration. A spherical vessel, Chimera's track-mounted plasma cannon swung around to the front as it came into optimal firing range to the buoy. The circle on the infrared feed brightened slowly, then suddenly a flash of white filled the screen just before the recording ended. Have they responded to hail? Kelly asked. Captain hasn't hailed them. His orders are to hold and gather information before we set a course or take action. But if for some reason we engage them, you should know. What do you know so far? Could they be rebels or maybe hacked? If they were rebels, it would make more sense to strike a valuable target. This nebula is filled with beacons and they're easy to replace. As for UniTerra, there's no way they'd intrude this far into our territory. Do we have data on the Chimera, like how long they've been in the parsec? When did they start destroying beacons? Yes, the beacon network has all of this data. The Chimera started firing wildly at first about 21 minutes ago. They hit a couple beacons with their wild shots, then started targeting them. I mean, it almost sounds like the crew is just acting like a bunch of backwards yokels shooting things for fun, Kelly said. Andrew chuckled. Look at this chart. It shows Adam's readout of Chimera's crew synaptic readings. Gradually, over the last hour, the readings have been looking more and more abnormal. Their brainwaves look eerily similar to those of people who used to have a psychological condition called dissociative identity disorder. It caused multiple personalities, some of them destructive. Weren't mental conditions like that cured when the ComNet became mainstream 100 years ago? Why would it be occurring now? Oh no. What is it? On a hunch that the problem is environmental, I checked our synaptic readings, Andrew said. Kelly accessed the same data, witnessing for herself that the Ursan's crew's brainwaves had also been degrading since they landed in the Delphi system. At this rate, we'll be as crazy as a Chimera crew is in 18 minutes. Also, they've closed their distance to us. They're now 5 sectors away. Hold on. All crew, general quarters, Captain Casey announced. This is not a drill. TCS Chimera is on an intercept course, and we must assume they have hostile intent. Chimera's weapons are no match for ours, but you are not to fire on the friendly ship until we better assess the situation and figure out why they are behaving erratically. I repeat, do not fire. Execute defensive procedures and evasive maneuvers. Set course for the star relay at full impulse. Her flight chair's restraints engaged, strapping her in tightly. Kelly wondered for a moment if she was still in a simulation. This is real, Ensign Harper, Adam said, and that's why simulations are dangerous. I understand that now, Adam. Thank you. Kelly peered over sensor readouts on Chimera. Her specifications indicated that it had a small supply of Aceleron torpedoes. Adam, about that point defense program I was working on, can we use torpedoes for point defense? I don't have to tell you anything, Adam said. I'm sorry. Please disregard my last statement. You are not authorized. Restate last command. What? Adam, what's the matter? Maybe you should run a self-diagnostic. A sudden blast rocked through the ship, jerking her head to the right and pressing her ribs against the chair's restraints. Sorry, I'm just trying to keep you safe, Adam said in a different, comforting tone. Oh my God, Kelly thought to herself. Andrew! Kinda busy right now, Weps. What's up? The psychological side effect, whatever is happening, could it affect Adam too? Impossible. If it's environmental, it could only affect biological... Wait. if the environmental effect is in the ComNet itself, then yes, Adam would also be affected. Maybe that's why the crew of the Chimera was trying to destroy the navigation beacons. Because the beacons repeat the ComNet broadcasts, Kelly said. But there are too many. Another blast on the hull sent Urson into a roll. Harper felt G-forces spinning her like a merry-go-round. She tensed her abdomen and legs, forcing blood into her head as her flight chair compensated. There are too many beacons. If this is a ComNet glitch, we can't destroy enough beacons to have any effect quickly, she said. Would you two be quiet? Vogel said. Captain, we need to fire on Chimera. It's our only chance to survive this. Negative. Hold fire. I repeat, hold fire, Captain Casey said. Kelly sensed her thoughts get as foggy as the nebula they were traveling through. As though caught in a daydream, she remembered her conversation with Ramadi at Grimm Station. Thought mag protocol, she whispered. Thought mag only applies to the crew while they're on duty. Adam, you need to relieve us from duty immediately due to psychological impairment. No, Adam said. You need to stay on duty right now. Adam, Kelly said, tears pressed from her eyes. I'm not feeling well. I'm going to throw up. Oh, my, then you are relieved of duty. Don't make a mess. Just as quickly, Kelly's Oni displayed disengage from ship control. The storm of thoughts in her mind were swept away, leaving her with eerie silence. Her only recourse to cure the condition affecting Adam and her crew was to shut down the ship's reactor, but it would require her to leave the safety of her flight chair. Unfortunately, doing so would expose her to risk of injury. As she was about to hit a button on her chair to manually release the straps, a sudden maneuver pulled her to the other side with more G-forces than she had ever felt. She let out a strained yell as the centripetal force pulled her restraints against her ribs. Then, instantly, a stillness. Collecting her thoughts and breathing rapidly, Kelly righted her position and adjusted the chair restraints. Adam, what's happening? Several moments of quiet passed. Kelly had no access to information, no Oni, nothing. Ensign Harper? Adam's voice spoke normally. Yes, Adam, what happened? Kelly gasped. I don't know. I was offline. My core has been restarted, Adam replied. Andrew, was it you? Kelly asked. The link was quiet for an uncomfortably long pause. Sir, she repeated. Crew, report. What happened? Why did the reactor go offline? Captain Casey asked. I'm sorry I didn't ask for clearance to do so, but I planted a bug in Adam's memory which caused a logic error and it couldn't process, Andrew stammered. Lieutenant, why did you initiate a system restart without an order to do so? Casey barked. There was no time. I figured that rebooting Adam would recalibrate the ComNet for us and Chimera, he replied. A hail came in. Mayday! Mayday! This is Captain Martin of Conglomerate Frigate Chimera. I don't know what happened, but we all woke up from some kind of trance over here. 2 of my crew are badly injured. We have taken heavy damage to our support and armament system, and our medical drones aren't responding. ComNet is barely functional. Please render assistance ASAP. Pull up alongside and release repair drones to assist, then dock, Captain Casey announced to all hands, betrayed by his red sinatones of frustration. Kelly opened the ship log and gasped as she read the last few entries. Before the ship's reactor and Adam had been shut down, Urson had fired on Chimera 3 times, landing direct hits to her support and armament systems. The commands were executed by Commander Vogel.